welcome back to the Entertainment Vortex. Today we were at Brendan Theaters watching Thor Ragnarok. Now, anybody knows this movie was going to be a huge event. Not only is it a Marvel movie, which is always a huge event, but the hype going up to this movie was crazy. We were getting crazy good scores. Everybody's saying it's the best Marvel movie ever made. We're getting reviews, early reviews from critics talking about how this is like the golden child of comic book movies. I'm going to be honest, this movie is fantastic. I really enjoyed it. It's a great ride. It's super lighthearted, which you can look at as being a good or a bad thing, and I'll go into that in a minute. It's fun from the beginning to the end. I found myself laughing out loud a lot more than I typically do in movies. I found myself really enjoying where the characters were going and enjoying what was happening on screen. The banter is some of the best banter I've seen for a very long time. I mean, this was really good. The dialogue timing and the comedy timing is on point.
When it comes to the Marvel movies and their current MCU lineup, I usually come in, pretty favorable as far as the movies are concerned. There are a couple of low points for me on the list, and it's one of the things that I'm sorry to say that the two previous Thor movies are part of that list. They're not bad movies by any stretch of the imagination, but they're definitely not any of the high points. This particular movie, Thor Ragnarok, changes a lot of that for me. When it comes to this particular movie, I feel like they do a lot to really keep you engaged, which they kind of lose, especially in Thor the Dark World. There's a lot of that weird kind of let you down kind of moments that are in that movie. We won't go too far into it. But as far as this movie is concerned, I don't feel like I was let down at any point in time. I feel like everything is there to make you excited to see what's on screen. The action sequences are absolutely fantastic. The humor is out of this world good. Just the conversations between the characters, they have you in stitches from the moment the movie starts to the moment the movie ends.
Hyped up to be one of the best Marvel films of all time. I don't quite disagree, but it does rank up there as far as its humor and style and performance of the actors, the chemistry, the bantering, all adds up to the hype. And it's very Guardians of the Galaxy-like, which is I think what Marvel's aiming for, in contrast to DC films that want to go dark and broody. So I think it's nice to see Thor take a direction to the lighter side of things, even though a lot happens and goes down in this film, which is surprising. You've got a lot of humor for a movie that's about the end of all things, so to say, which is what Ragnarok means, for those of you who are not familiar with the comics or the word itself.
There were a couple aspects that kind of bothered me. Now, these aren't the kind of things that ruin a movie, keep that in mind, but these are, in my opinion, valid critiques. The story is super heavy-handed. I didn't really notice it while I was watching the movie, but after the movie, while I was discussing it with a couple friends, and I was thinking about it, I'm like, wow, they really shove exposition down your throat in multiple moments. It's kind of like the story is, oh, by the way, we forgot to tell you this. Oh, by the way, we also forgot to tell you this, and this, and this over here, and this over here. Oh, it's all happening right now. Like, that all happens in one scene. It's like, so wait, so these huge events, just forgot to mention this? To anybody? Even the characters? It's like, well, we need a new story, and we haven't really set anything up, so let's just pretend it always existed, and we'll just drop it all on the table, surrounded by jokes, so everything's okay. We're spoiler-free here, I'm not going to give anything away, but major stuff happens in this movie. And because the humor is so thick in this movie, it doesn't really feel major. Like, you go, wait, did that just happen? Oh, no joke, I'm laughing again. And then you get to the end, you're like, this made some serious freaking changes to the Marvel Universe, and it feels like they kind of glossed over it. There's no real emotional reaction when something big happened.
I do feel like this isn't a movie that is 100% the best movie in the Marvel Universe currently. I feel like there are other movies that have done this particular formula better, but it doesn't mean that this movie isn't absolutely fantastic. It doesn't mean that the visual style isn't great, that they don't do a great job of building the world that they're in and still helping to progress the story forward and get us closer to that endpoint.
As always, the visual effects live up to expectations in Marvel films. I always enjoy their logo in the beginning. They show it before every Marvel film. They make that logo look better and better every time. Soundtrack, first time I've heard 80s music in a Thor film. That was a nice little touch they added. Again, probably inspired by Guardians of the Galaxy. And there seems to be a lot of 80s nostalgia going around these days. I don't think I've laughed this much in a Marvel film since Guardians of the Galaxy. And I keep bringing that up because, again, this movie is on par as far as its humor and tone is concerned with that. If this were a spoiler review, I'd delve into this like you wouldn't believe. There's so much I want to talk about in this movie, but I can't. This is, again, as Nick points out on occasion, this is a spoiler-free review. If you are a Marvel fan already, or you like Thor films, or even Hulk, You're going to love this movie and you're going to have a great time. And don't take it too seriously, because otherwise you're going to bash it. Just go there, have a good time, and laugh, and enjoy what you see.
The humor, I think, is the best part of this movie, so I'm almost at odds with myself. What made this movie so fun to watch was because I was cracking up the entire time. So is this a situation where you can't have both? I don't really think so. I think you can take the serious moments more serious while still being super lighthearted. I feel the two Guardians of the Galaxy movies are a good example of that, especially the first Guardians movie. But this one takes that comedy and silliness and turns it up to 11. And they use the trick with all the classic music and stuff like that. With that being said, these are not movie-ruining things. These are things that I noticed that kind of bothered me a little bit, but didn't stop me from really loving this movie.
This movie tells a story that maybe needed a little bit more time, but there's not really much that they could have done to have made this movie longer. You know, it wouldn't have been something where all of the plot points they needed to make happen before we start getting to these larger plot points within the entire extended story that they've been trying to tell for all these years up to this point. I feel like they could have maybe made a middle point somewhere, added some additional story points that they told in this movie onto different movies along the way and stretched this out further, but I also feel like we don't need that.
When it comes to Idris Elba, I have to talk about him, man, because that man, everything he touches is like the coolest thing ever. Whether he's playing the gunslinger, which I know wasn't a super popular movie, but he was amazing in that movie. Whether he's playing the Heimdall in this movie, or whether he's just in like a Rainbow Six commercial, this guy is just BA in everything he does. It's to the point now where if I see his name on something, I'm gonna run out and see it. I didn't see his last movie, I will definitely see the rest of his movies going forward. Another thing that kind of bothered me about this movie is how they handled Hulk. Now, I can't really go into details about this without being spoiler heavy. Try not to think about it during the movie. I don't want to ruin your experience, but when you get out of the movie, kind of analyze what they did with the duality of that character and how they changed what that character used to be and kind of what they're defining him as now. I didn't care for that choice. During the flow of the movie, it's hilarious because everything they're doing is humor and lighthearted, but I feel a knot in my stomach for what that character is going to be going forward, and that really worries me.
When it comes to the action set pieces and the way that things were acted by the characters, I feel like all those things were done really well. Nothing is necessarily believable in Marvel, but it was definitely entertaining to watch. I love seeing all the characters on screen. I love having Hulk back into the fold. It's been a couple years since we've seen him, and I feel like this movie was really great. I'm going to see it several times in theaters. I'll probably end up seeing it tomorrow if I can make that happen. Overall, I'm going to say this movie is a 10 out of 10. I don't necessarily think that it's the best Marvel movie, but I don't think that it's a shade lower than the greats that are currently out there.
So out of 10, I'm going to give this a 9.5 out of 10. Do not bash me because I didn't give it a perfect score. Nothing in my world, my own world anyway, is perfect. That includes Marvel films. And that is not an apology, and I'm not second-guessing myself. That is my score, and I'm sticking to it.
I just wish they would have taken the story a little more seriously. That's my biggest complaint. So with that being said, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. This is a solid movie. It's a fun movie. I do believe I laughed more in this movie than any other Marvel movie, including the Guardians movies. But I don't feel this tops the Guardians movie. With people saying this is the best Marvel movie to hit and it's the greatest thing ever and this is the golden child of Marvel movies, I just don't agree. I have multiple movies that are above this in my opinion, but this is a must see, without question. You need to see this movie. And if you don't see it in theaters, because it's quite a spectacle, you're gonna regret it. It's worth seeing in theaters. So I'm curious, what is your favorite Marvel movie? Leave that down in the comment section below. And of course, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel for weekly movie reviews like this, weekly Funko Pop collectors videos, fan films, along with much, much more. I hope you'll follow us into the vortex. We'll see you next time.